What a crazy day for TFI International, up 32.25% in just one trading day. Looking at the 5-day chart, we can see that at the open this morning, this stock just bounced and then it continued its way, gradually climbing for the remainder of the trading day. On the 5-year chart, we can see that the company has had growth. They did have the sell-off just like everyone else in March. But like most logistics companies, they rebounded quite quickly and have continued a real nice uptrend over the last few months. But the real question on most people's mind is what created this 32.5% move in the last trading day? Hello and welcome to the Financial Future Guide. I'm your guy and I'm your guide. My name is Alex and today we're looking at TFI International, ticker symbol TFII on the Toronto Stock Exchange. In this video, we'll be covering everything from what the company does, their current valuation, their historical performance, the dividend, and we'll also be having a look at the big news that came out for this company today that sent the stock price skyrocketing. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. So the big news was UPS to sell freight trucking business to TFI for $800 million. In exiting truck cargo, UPS to focus on parcel delivery network. So most would have heard of UPS, but for those who don't know, UPS is commonly known for delivering reminders to like my videos and subscribe to the Financial Future Guide. Now we are going to get a little bit more into this news shortly, but first we're going to do a little bit of analysis on TFI International. If you want to skip all of that and go straight to this news, then I'll leave a timestamp below. Taking a look at the stock quote, just note that all the prices here are in Canadian dollars. The stock closed at $86.08, up $20.99 on the day or 32.25%. They now have a market cap of $8.037 billion. And they have a PE ratio of 22.83 over the trailing 12 months. However, this does not necessarily reflect what the PE has been at historically, but with the stock surging over 30% in the last trading day, it has thrown out a few key metrics, so just keep that in mind and I'll point them out as we go along. Earnings per share over the trailing 12 months was $3.77. And given that they're trading at all-time highs, they are at the high end of the 52-week range, trading anywhere between $23.21 and $86.35 in the last year. TFI pays a dividend of $1.16, which equates to 1.78% dividend yield. To give a quick overview of the business, they are a transport and logistics solution provider, and the company operates 4 main business segments: package and courier, less than truckload, and logistics. They are quite diversified in terms of revenue, with retail making up 26%, manufactured goods making up 16%, and then the remaining industries make up anywhere between 1 and 8% of their total revenue. They have an extensive North American network operating through Canada, Mexico, and the US. And finally, I would like to call out their business model and brand strategy. TFI International has had great success acquiring other transport and logistics companies in North America, successfully completing 88 acquisitions since 2008. The management has integrated a system called decentralization. When they acquire a company, they don't take over and change the name to TFI International. For instance, they may acquire a company, let's take an example of Tom's Trucking Service. Now, from TFI's research prior to purchasing the company, they already knew that Tom's Trucking Service has excellent management and services their customers' needs greatly. Instead of coming in and rebranding, putting new management in, and making significant changes to the underlying business, instead, for the most of it, they let the company continue their operations as is, and then TFI just steps in on the back end, helping with all of those administrative costs, meaning each one of their branches can focus on what they do best, servicing the customer. I think this is a great way to maintain and strengthen brand loyalty for each individual local business that have been working with their customers for many years. This also allows each one of the branches to move as they must, make changes in day-to-day activities, and essentially ensure that they meet whatever needs that their particular customer base has in that particular area. It's a different kind of management that we often see in these large companies, but I think there are great things that can come from it. Alright, so moving on to the historical performance, we'll have a look at Phil Town's Rule 1 numbers, because this gives us a quick snapshot of how the company has been performing over the last decade. So the book value per share and dividend growth rate, that first line up the top there, has had strong performance over the last 10 years. However, it has been a little subpar in the last 3 years. You can say the same for earnings per share growth and even sales growth. Acquiring UPS's freight division is huge for TFI International. This is going to significantly grow their book value per share, their earnings per share, and their sales. So although they are boosting this through an acquisition, as we noted previously, that is what the business does. That's their whole model, growth through acquisition. We can also see that their operating cash per share growth has been really strong. And then if we head down to their management, their return on equity is excellent, and their return on invested capital isn't great, but it's also not bad either. Now looking at the share price versus fair value, Simply Wall Street is a great tool for all investors, and they offer an estimated fair value based on the cash flows the company is expected to generate in the future. Their fair value estimate for TFI is $131.75, which means that they're currently 34.7% undervalued based on this metric. As always, I like to look at the price to book ratio, in which companies that are below 1 could be potentially viewed as undervalued, whereas those with a higher price to book ratio may be trading at a premium. So TFI International's price to book ratio is 3.6. Now, as I mentioned earlier, a few metrics are thrown off a little bit. This is definitely one of them, as the price did increase over 30% today. However, the book value of the company has not changed, and obviously all the assets that the company acquired in their UPS deal have not yet settled. Nonetheless, we'll take a look at FedEx, which is one of their main competitors that is trading at a 3.2 price to book ratio. So based on this metric, it does appear that TFI International is somewhat aligned with its competitors, and obviously if we hadn't had the huge run up in the stock price today, it would be trading at a lower price to book ratio than FedEx. Now on to the dividend history. Taking a look at the chart, we can see very steady growth over the last 9 years. What you do notice here is the dividend yield, which is seen here on this graph as blue, has been on a downwards trend, and this is mainly because the growth of the company and the stock price has been growing much more rapidly than the dividend. So a decade ago, they were paying out a 40 cents dividend, which came to a 4% dividend yield, and they're now paying out $1.16, which equates to a 1.78% dividend yield. And taking a look at the payout ratio, they are only paying out 27% of their retained earnings, which means there's plenty of room to grow this in the future. Well, we all know that we like to look at the recent insider trading because it gives us a good idea of what insiders, also known as those with inside the company, think of the current valuation, and if we see them buying, it's usually a good sign that they either think the company is undervalued or at fair value, or they believe there are big things coming in the future. There's not a lot of recent insider activities, but we do have 2 buys, with Diane buying at the $44 mark, putting in about 220,000 Canadian, and she's one of the key board members. And then we have the CEO Alan Bedard, who picked up a small position, but he put another $20,000 in. So this is insider buying that we've seen from the board or management team recently. However, I did want to bring your attention to buying that we've seen from the top shareholders of the company. This is really great to see, super positive. The 6 largest shareholders of TFI International have been increasing their positions. It's nice to see that institutions are buying into this company and growing their positions, which means they too see a strong future outlook for TFI International. Finally, heading over to the ownership, another super positive sign, with these board members having good ownership within the company, which is always good to see because it means that those who run the company have shareholders' best interests in mind. Alright, so here we have it, the big news. The TFI International agrees to acquire UPS Freight. As we saw from the run-up in the stock price, investors were both happy and very excited about this news. So here we have a little bit of information about the deal. The purchase price was $800 million US. They have also noted that this was in line with the reported book value of the segment. What is also super positive to see is this was an all-cash consideration, and it's to be financed through available liquidity, cash on hand, and available under revolving facilities. This is great to see from an investor's standpoint, as the company did not have to take on significant debt to fund this deal, and I also know that they have around about $500 million in cash or cash equivalents, so based on this, I think the transaction structure of the deal was definitely workable for TFI. To allow for a smooth transition, there are a few key points that TFI ensured were covered to take away potential risks that could arise from the acquisition. This includes the existing freight relationship with parent company, aka UPS, to continue for a 5-year base term. UPS will also provide IT, back office, and other support for up to 3 years to minimize system disruptions. The transaction has been unanimously approved by the board of both TFI and UPS and is expected to close in Q2 2021. However, it is important to note that the transaction is subject to usual and customary closing conditions, including regulatory compliance. Based on this, I don't see any reason for this deal not to go through, so I'm fairly positive they will move forward with the transaction. UPS Freight has two main segments: less than truckload and ground with freight pricing. Less than truckload shipments carry palletized and non-palletized goods up to 20,000 pounds, whereas ground with freight pricing shipments carry non-palletized goods around 150 pounds or more. This acquisition will provide TFI with complete coverage to and from Canada and Mexico with door-to-door visibility. The vast network will help TFI reach and help their customers' business grow, which essentially will benefit TFI. In their GFP segment, this is a cost-efficient and high-margin business model with an attractive growth portfolio. They're also the only LTL carrier to offer ground delivery service at LTL pricing. If we have a look at their revenues by segment, we can see that less than truckload accounts for about 80% of UPS Freight's revenue. The rest is made up from ground with freight pricing and dedicated truckload. UPS is one of the leading LTL providers in North America with revenues of $3 billion. This is a huge bump to TFI's revenue, and one of the reasons that UPS was selling this segment of their business was despite doing $3 billion in revenues, UPS Freight was only just breaking even. If we have a look at TFI's operating margins over the last 5 years, they've been able to grow these quite nicely. And I think based on TFI's management and business model, I think they'll be able to implement their solutions to improve margins, ultimately making the UPS Freight segment a profitable part of their business. UPS Freight also has an expansive real estate portfolio strategically located across the country with substantial value. This is obviously super important for a transport business, so even on its own, I think this is a great asset to help TFI continue to grow their market share in the United States. So if we take a look at a map here of North America, these yellow dots represent TFI's LTL sites, and as we can see, they're scattered through Canada, but they do not have any in the US at the moment. The dark blue dots represent properties owned by UPS Freight, and the light blue spots represents locations that UPS Freight currently has leased. The network currently has 197 terminals, including 21 hubs. 147 of these are owned and 50 are leased. TFI will also take over ownership of the large fleet of assets. TFI's current LTL segment contains 38 terminals and 886 vehicles, whereas the acquisition of UPS Freight would bring that total to 235 terminals and 7,226 vehicles. This is obviously a significant increase on their current capacity and will allow them to become a much stronger player in the LTL sector. So here we're going to look at the North American LTL competitive landscape, and this just shows us the LTL competitors based on their revenues. We have TFI International down here at $625 million. We have UPS Freight here with $3.3 billion, and combining them we'll get $4 billion, which will make them the 5th largest in North America. So in taking a look at the transaction and deal, I think that this is a great move for TFI International. I think they'll see many benefits from a move such as this. And for a company that has consistently proven that they're able to make acquisitions successfully, I think this one may have huge returns for the company. But anyway, it's a big move. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. Was this company already on your watch list? Are you watching it now? Or maybe you're a current investor that doesn't agree with the addition. Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Alright, so that's all for today. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to see videos similar to this one. And tell your friends. And your friends' friends. And your cousin's sister. And their dog.